This is a webinar about our introduction of Industry Graph. We created Industry Graph to anticipate client interests in business and financial decision making. I am James Andrus, President and Technical Founder of News Patterns. Industry Graph was created between News Patterns and Industry Building Blocks and its president, Alan Michaels. News Patterns has been in the intelligence business for over 10 years, as has also been Industry Building Blocks. News Patterns got into the intelligence business based on the fact that our multinational clients were really concerned about what was evolving in terms of potential market threats and opportunities based on the ever-flowing and ever-increasing torrents of news. News Patterns over its many years has developed special algorithms to look at relationships, look at what's relevant, and then deliver intelligence insights back to our clients. Industry Building Blocks has had a similar development career in that it was creating the most unique database of industry classification that exists today. We combine the two effects of News Patterns and Industry Building Blocks to get to this point of introducing Industry Graph today, which is a major innovation of business and financial decision making. Welcome to our webinar. Several years ago, Eric Schmidt of Google, who was CEO at that time, was interviewed by the Wall Street Journal. And he said some very interesting things that are very much in sync with what Industry Graph is about today. And basically what Eric Schmidt said is that more and more searches are done on your behalf without you needing to type. That was the trend that Google was working on several years ago, which will become more manifest as we talk about Google today. Schmidt went on to say is that their clients, their users, quote, they want Google to tell them what they should be doing next. So this whole idea of having a major search engine start looking at anticipating what its users, what its clients want to do or need to know or need to do next was a direction that Google has been after for several years now, and it's starting to manifest itself in this next slide, which is a slide that's all about the major anticipation internet graphs that are being developed today. Google is taking the lead on its knowledge graph, which aims to understand the searcher's intent or the user's intent in their network. What does that user need to know or want to know? The social graph has been the development genius of Facebook since its onset. And of course, the social graph is about people-to-people context and people-to-people relationships, so the right information, useful information can be delivered to Facebook users. And then there's the interest graph, which is being developed by Yahoo and others, that is about the context of personal identity that can be used as indicators of interest. So these major internet graphs are indicative of the type of information or the type of knowledge trends that are going on in the internet today. Now the anticipation utilities that we just talked about with the different graphs are supplementing and transcending this whole idea of looking stuff up. I think everyone realizes today that almost anyone can go to the internet and find a search box somewhere and input some keywords and end up getting huge amounts of information in this looking it up, type mode. But of course, the idea of looking it up means that you know what you're searching for in the first place. And also, it's pretty much presumes that you know the context of what it is that you need to be looking for. So, this whole idea of looking things up is still quite prevalent in the internet today, and it's certainly part of how people find information. But there's too many limitations to it, including the fact of confirmation biases keep people from looking in new directions based on what they think they should be looking for, and also it just assumes people know what to input in the first place. And also the paradox of you can't really search for surprise. So this whole idea of looking it up is indeed being transcended by the anticipatory graphs that we just talked about, and we're going to be adding to the list of graphs in just a moment when we talk about the industry graph. And our invention of the industry graph is really the component of two main pieces. One is the Industry Building Block database, and the second is the News Pattern Competitive Discovery Network. When you combine these two functions together, these two pieces of intellectual property together, you end up getting the industry graph, which is designed for business and financial awareness and business and financial discovery, and also anticipating business and financial interests without a user needing to enter that search to find things that should be relative or interesting to them. The benefits of Industry Graph, and we'll certainly get into details of this in a moment, is that it is simple. Just the fact that our users can be connected to an Industry Graph network now and have interesting and relative news information, new industry ideas, be delivered to them. It's this whole idea of simplicity, not requiring our clients and users to be rigorously searching for what it is that they might be interested in. The speed and mobility are certainly part of this because we can be delivering these insights in a very compressed mode to any users, via their tablets or their smartphone. It's all about the discovery of relevant news trends and social media, again, without searching. It's discovery of interesting industries based on evolving trends. Just to think about that for a minute, is that with the membership or connection to the Industry Graph network, is that the network and the algorithms and the whole database are going to be looking for new trends that you should be aware of. Again, how would you know to look for something that you don't even know exists yet? Which all leads to a superior decision-making context, and also this idea of extremely personalized discovery and alerting is all part of the end value set that the Industry Graph was invented for. The first major component of Industry Graph is, like I said, is the Industry Building Block Database. And this database is very special for a couple reasons. First of all, it was fundamentally put together with a very unique objective, is to capture the archetypal competition around what Michael Porter described in terms of these competitive forces of any competitive environment. Michael Porter of the Harvard Business School formulated that every competitive environment is really defined by its competitors, by the suppliers into it, the buyers from it, potential entrants into it, and also potential substitutes of it. If you take these 5 archetypical competitive forces and bring them into the Industry Building Block Database, which we have, you've got a superior context for understanding competitive evolutions, competitive trends, and the status of attractiveness of any industry. Not only for business making decisions, but certainly for financial making decisions. And also take that idea of this expansive idea of defining industries by these Porter competitive forces. We now go into the huge granularity of having 15,000 of them within this database. 15,000 sounds like a pretty big number, and it is, but it's also very big when you think that most other classification systems, the Industry Building Block system is 10 times more granular in terms of industry definitions than equivalent type of classification systems out there today. So this is a very powerful foundation that's unique to Industry Graph, that starts with this very granular classification system in terms of defining what these industries are in the first place. Now we add to the other component of Industry Graph is the discovery algorithms of news patterns. Discovery is really important in this context because now that we have so much information flowing in about an industry, because we're expanding it beyond the typical things of competitors to being suppliers, buyers, entrants, and substitutes, and by the way, other things like governmental forces and societal trends often enter the picture, we need technologies to help prioritize and discover what is evolving, what could be relevant, instead of just turning on a fire hose of information aimed at people based on the expanded view of what an industry is. That's what our algorithms do. And we use news and social media as the inputs to our algorithms to help us determine what's evolving, what's emerging, what is potentially interesting, what could be relevant, what could be a threat, what could be an opportunity. We do this in real time as news is changing, minute by minute, day by day. And we actually take it to the next step of animating what these changing relationships look like amongst competitors, buyers, suppliers, etc. So it delivers even a higher sense of informational value based on looking at how these relationships are evolving and changing in an animated, almost video game-like format, which we're going to show you that in a little bit here. And all this, of course, leads on to the sense of anticipation of the interest or anticipation of user needed information that our system can deliver is certainly part of the value set of what the news patterns discovery is adding to the Industry Graph. What I'm going to do now is talk about three use cases for the industry graph, and the three are exploring amongst it. One is assisted searching, and the third is discovery. So I'm going to talk about these three use cases, based on what the industry graph delivers, to our clients. First, let's talk about exploring. As a quick overview of what we're going to talk about with exploring, if we start with this very large 15,000 granular industry definitions in the industry building block database, you'll see here that we start with the ability to look at the broad scope of the entire world economy, then start drilling down progressively into more and more detail until we get to very, very specific industry definitions. And finally, at the end of the road is a sense of what is that industry defined by as its competitors, buyers, suppliers, new entrants, and even more information. So that level of many companies, much detail, all in a hierarchy, defined by competitive Porter forces, is what we do in terms of enabling our clients to explore amongst, the industry graph. So here is the first step in this whole process of the entire world economy is captured, and by the way, it continues to be captured every day because it's evolving and changing. But we're capturing the entire world economy in the slide that you're seeing here. So you would start here at the top of the entire world economy. And in this case here, we're going to drill down into the medical and healthcare part of the database. Now looking at the healthcare sector of the database, we're now going to go into another wedge of this further into medical equipment manufacturing. As we drill even further into it, we're going to look at medical equipment for body parts, etc. So this wedge of the database. Again, we're drilling further and further into it. And finally, finally is one more step in the process. We're going to look at heart-related products. Again, more refined, more organized, in terms of what the industry building block database gives. Again, there's the other related, parts of this group here within the database. And almost to the end of the road here, we're going to look at industries for heart-related medical products, and these 40 or 30 or 40, different very specific industries. Again, we're at the industry level here. And in this case here, we want to pull up the industry that is uniquely defined by stents, heart stents, vascular stents, etc., manufacturing. Very refined. Again, we're giving you that sense of how detailed this database is, to the point here that now we're in this specific industry for heart stents and vascular stent manufacturing. And now we can see at least this small portion of the database, which is dedicated to the competitors themselves. Competitors by top corporate level, and then competitors by their brands. So we started out with the entire world economy, and here we are with the very specific detail about competitors within this space. Furthermore, if we wanted to look at even more at the bottom in terms of heart stents, etc., we saw just the competitor part a moment ago, but again, here are the Porter forces that we talked about of industry vendors, substitute segments, customer segments, and channel segments. Those would also be listed, at the end of the line in these industry definitions, as well as other types of information that you're seeing here grayed out. So great detail, starting out from the most general look at the world, is what the industry building block database does for the sense of what is the value of industry graph. And this proprietary level of not only granularity, but the whole competitive context is a hugely powerful knowledge base to start with, this idea of anticipating user interest or client interests, based on the sense of how the business world works. The second use case of industry graph is going to be assisted searching. Now, 10 minutes ago or so, I was beating up on the idea of searching as being, antiquated and, old school, but let's face it, there's still going to be needs for people to do searches and find what's interesting because they're curious. And so the fact is that we can now be instituting an assisted searching strategy is also another important part of what industry graph is. So the quick overview of assisted searching starts out with the idea that upon entering a simple input like the name of a company, Toyota, again, our objective here is for business and financial decision making. So that's what we're looking at in terms of the type of typical inputs that would go into it. What comes out of that idea for Toyota would be, here are example industries that would be interesting about Toyota, where Toyota participates. Again, every one of these, we'll show a bigger version in a second. These are industries where Toyota participates right now, and the system, you could recommend which of these very granular industries you're interested about Toyota, from which the system will deliver to you. Here are the interesting competitors, buyers, suppliers, entrants, and substitutes, type of information. Again, these are, you know, forces or company forces or technology forces that are interesting or relevant to Toyota in terms of transportation energy, which we chose here as the industry. And finally, that delivers, here's the relevant information based on that sense of linkages and connections of things that might be interesting to you. Again, not requiring you as a user to know that, beforehand. So again, walking through the steps here one by one is very simple entering of Toyota, which will produce a list of here are associated industries that Toyota is in, or industry combinations, which is transportation energy, which is a combination of several granular industries at once. So that being the mode of delivery, in this case, we're presuming the user would choose the transportation energy industry that we've grouped here, which delivers relevant detail about what you should be considering beyond Toyota if you're thinking about Toyota in terms of transportation energy. These are some of the key players that are involved with that competitive industry. And then finally from that is, here's news about Toyota, but it's in the context of transportation energy. And in many cases, there's other news items here that might not be Toyota itself, but industries that are related to Toyota enough today or at the point of this search that you should be interested in, even though you're not specifically asking, in this case, for some of them directly. So that's the idea of enhanced searching. It's assisting the user, assisting the financial decision maker, the business strategist on what is it I might be needing to know, and have the system be assisting them. Again, anticipating what some of their interests are ahead of them actually asking the question. The third area here of industry graph is discovery now. So in discovery, what we're going to be talking about is this basic flow. Again, we have to start with some kind of kernel, some kind of starting point, and let's just presume that this is a client or a user that is, again, interested in Toyota because of past experience, or this is part of his or her watch list or alerting list that he or she has been associated with. What happens next is, okay, knowing Toyota is interesting to them, and in fact, this would be Toyota again in terms of transportation energy. Here are these key trends. Again, trends is something we weren't really talking about in searching, but now with discovery, here are trends that are going on related to Toyota. And these trends are related to specific articles. And so we got this combination now of relevant articles, relevant things beyond Toyota that are associated or relevant to Toyota, and also the trends of Toyota without the user needing to do anything except say, I'm starting with Toyota. So let's start with Toyota again. And Toyota is on the watch or alert list in terms of describing discovery in industry graph. Again, this is a Toyota that would be associated with transportation energy, which where the interest is. And we have the ability to be more sophisticated at this, of saying, okay, here are interesting other industries that you may not be looking at today about Toyota that you might want to be diverting some of your attention on because of patterns that we've discovered in the background, and we have the ability to do that too. So again, it's in the context of transportation energy in Toyota. Now here's the first big step that this is truly about discovery here, is that here are trends about things related to Toyota and transportation energy. And basically what the trend is in this case, either it's central to all information trends, or it's current connections that are changing or becoming stronger. Something might be dissipating from relevancy and those type of things. And finally, are there new connections being formed? So all this idea of the Porter forces and what's going on is we have this ability to be sorting all these connections out and prioritizing them, delivering them in a way that a user can say, oh, wow, here's some things that I should be knowing if I'm interested in Toyota, for example, something about diesels in this case today. And then clicking directly through diesels or collecting through to Mercedes or Exxon and seeing what that information relative to Toyota might be. And of course, there doesn't necessarily have to be a direct, Toyota in the search string on that. It's all built into the system, so it's delivering insights without a user needing, to take that step himself. And finally, at the end of the road, for our cases, here are those articles that come out of that sense of being interested in Toyota. And so now we get to very specific articles from almost any news source or social media source is now available. And what is the characteristic of that article? Is it about a competitor themselves, or is it between a competitor and a substitute, or is it about a substitute by itself, or So the sense of the topics that are interesting as a competitive force and the connections thereof is really some of the powerful, information that we're delivering about discovery, in this case about Toyota, through our industry graph, type of network. And this is what you're seeing here in terms of the end result. Again, it looks a little bit more complicated than it is in actual client delivery, just for the fact that we're walking through a process, because many of the steps that we just saw here would be transparent to a user, and all they would be seeing is those trends and those articles without any of the intermediate steps that we just looked at, as part of the simplicity of what this really is. And this gets into another aspect of discovery beyond the textual type of discovery, in terms of written trends or trends that are, or articles that are in text form, is what we always have discovered here too, or also have done, is that we look at discovery as a very fundamental part of survival. And we've always been able to perceive the world through sight, about what's going on, what could be a competitor, what could be a threat, what could be an opportunity, etc. And this whole idea of ancient man on the Serengeti plain is part of this basic fundamental belief of what we've baked into news patterns, and certainly with Industry Graph. And we wanted to create a system that was essentially had your back, a system that was there, part of your survival party. What is it I need to know? And not constantly bombarding you with every single observation, every single found piece of information, but highlighting the things that could be relevant, could be interesting in a timely and useful way, knowing that our users are very busy people that aren't dedicating huge amounts of time to trying to wrestle with squeezing information out of our system. So this whole idea of the human eye, the human brain, looking for patterns, assessing them and finding interesting insights for them, has really been baked into news patterns from the very start, because we basically survive by what we can see and how we can point it out and react to it. Our brains are massive pattern generation or pattern recognizing machines, so we can leverage that huge ability of our eyes and brains to understand patterns, perceive them, and react to them. Then we have a huge advantage in terms of how we can survive. Now, this has led into a very interesting innovation. I mentioned those animated news radars, which is almost like a video game of interacting information. And so that's what I'm going to show you next. What you're seeing here is an animated radar of the transportation energy industry that I was talking about a couple minutes ago. In it, you're seeing here buyer suppliers, all the porter forces, the type of things that we talked about earlier. And their position within this animated radar is really driven by the news itself. The news as defining, competitors amongst themselves, buyers, suppliers, substitutes, etc. And not only, those topics themselves, but the connecting lines amongst them. So this idea that we can be taking a competitive industry from, Industry Graph, from contextually finding what's interesting, textually delivering, what are these important trends, what are the important articles, but then taking it one step further, or maybe many steps further, is saying this is what it looks like on a large scale of these forces interacting amongst themselves, and then drawing our attention to things that are potentially interesting just by looking at the energy amongst different topics, and then actually being able to click on those places within the radar itself and actually see what's going on with the specific articles. We now have created a very fast utility for assessing and drilling down into potential threats or opportunities, or what could be relevant in terms of so much information about some of these very complex industries. And this is an outgrowth of Industry Graph, is this combination of competitive forces, competitive archetypes, very refined definitions of industry, and then the discovery algorithms of pointing our attention at those topics that deserve our attention. And that's what you're seeing in this animated radar here. So as a way of wrapping this up, is let's take a look at the solution benefits again that are baked into what Industry Graph is. It's first, this idea of simplicity. Is all the detail that I just talked about does not have to be on the surface of what our clients are seeing, but the endpoints of delivered articles, delivered relevant industries or interesting industries or new trends, those could be so concise that they could be delivered through smartphone devices and certainly tablets. So the idea of simplicity, which also gets into the speed and mobility of these insights, are being calculated 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so this is reacting to real-time news in terms of what a decision maker or a financial manager might be thinking about. Again, discovery of these relevant news and trends are based on news and social media without our users necessarily needing to search for them themselves. And it's also based on evolving industry trends or industry definitions themselves, that we can be looking at new industries evolving and then alerting, our clients to what those industries are, and that they could be interesting, to their financial planning or their strategy planning, which all leads to a superior decision-making context. And certainly a personalization of discovery and alerting are the value sets, that are built into what the industry graph, network is. So with that, that overview is, you can certainly see our ambition that the industry graph, as a combination of news patterns and industry building blocks, is certainly on an information level, albeit more focused than what Google is doing with Knowledge Graph and Facebook and with Social Graph and Yahoo with Interest Graph. Our contribution to this anticipatory graph revolution is really in sync with what Google and Facebook and Yahoo and others are doing. And that's why it's very exciting about what we're talking about today, to think that we could be assisting financial decision makers and business decision makers by creating a very dedicated industry graph, for what they are looking at and what they're interested in. So thank you very much for your attention on with this webinar. You certainly can reach us at www.newspatterns.com or likewise at Industry Building Blocks. And we appreciate your time today, and I look forward to potential conversations with you about what we're developing and perhaps how you'd like to participate or benefit from the things that we're doing here today. Thank you.